Please tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I would love to interact with you legends. Now to the story. When I first matched with Tyler, it felt like one of those rare moments when someone online actually seemed normal. No weird bios, no flexing mirror photos, no one-word replies. Just a guy who looked like he smelled good and said he just moved to my city. He mentioned he didn't know many people yet, so I figured, fine, why not show him around a bit? I'd been through enough half-hearted matches that a simple dinner didn't feel like a big deal. He suggested this small Italian restaurant downtown, the kind of place that's dimly lit but not in a fancy way, more like someone just forgot to replace half the bulbs. I got there first and was surprised when the hostess greeted me by name. Apparently, Tyler had already called ahead for a table. Kind of thoughtful, kind of extra, but whatever, I rolled with it. When he arrived, he looked just like his photos, which is always a relief. Brown hair slightly grown out, wearing a fitted jacket, and that easy smile that makes you forget to check for red flags. He said something about being glad to finally meet me in person, and his voice was low and calm. There was nothing off at all, at least at first. We ordered a bottle of wine, and while he talked, I noticed how he had this way of looking around, not distracted, more like he was taking in the whole room. He'd nod at people as they walked past, the kind of friendly nod that locals give each other. At first, I didn't think much of it, but then I realized people were nodding back. One of the waiters even clapped him on the shoulder as he refilled our water glasses. I made a small comment about how fast he was fitting in, but he just laughed it off. I tried to tell myself it didn't mean anything, that maybe he'd just been here longer than he'd said. But as the night went on, more and more people seemed to know him. A couple at the bar waved when they caught his eye. Even the manager came over, said it was good to see him again, and that next time the dessert was on the house. I started to get that weird crawling feeling in the back of my mind, the kind where something doesn't add up, but you can't put your finger on it yet. He was still polite, still charming, still asking me about work and music and all the usual surface-level things. But the moment he excused himself to take a phone call, I noticed the hostess whispering something to another waiter glancing toward our table. Then, as if the universe wanted to make sure I didn't miss the point, this woman walked in, maybe late 20s, wearing a long beige coat and holding a takeaway bag. She looked comfortable, like she'd been there 100 times before. The moment she saw Tyler coming back toward the table, her whole face lit up. She walked straight over, leaned in, and kissed him on the cheek like it was the most natural thing in the world. She said, "See you at home," and then just walked off, calm as ever. Tyler froze for a split second before forcing that same practiced smile. He sat down like nothing happened, pretending to scroll through his phone. I didn't even say anything. I just stared at him until he finally looked up. That's when he dropped the act completely. His face went flat, no emotion at all. He just said it wasn't what it looked like, but didn't even try to explain further. It was like he'd done this before. I didn't finish my drink. I stood up, grabbed my bag, and walked out while he called after me. He didn't follow, but when I got outside, I saw him through the window, still sitting there with that same fake calmness, like he knew I wouldn't make a scene. When I got home, I went straight to Tinder. His profile was gone, just vanished. No unmatched message, no trace. It's like he deleted his account the moment I walked out. I tried searching his name online, thinking maybe I'd find a LinkedIn or something. Nothing came up. Not one real result. A week later, I went back to that same restaurant with a friend, just to test my own sanity. Same place, same staff, same quiet lighting. I showed the waiter a photo of Tyler that I'd saved. The guy's face changed instantly. He said, "Oh, him. He's here all the time. Comes in with his girlfriend, sometimes his sister." Except the woman who kissed him that night didn't look like his sister. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about how confident he'd been, like he expected me to ignore the obvious. The fact that everyone there knew him wasn't even the strangest part. It was how they all seemed used to seeing him with different people. It made me wonder how many times he pulled the same thing, telling each girl he was new in town, using the same restaurant as his little stage. The waiter probably thought I was just another one of his guests. Maybe they even felt sorry for me. I deleted Tinder the next day, not out of heartbreak, but more like I needed a reset. The whole thing messed with my sense of what's real. He hadn't lied in a dramatic way. It was small, believable lies stacked on top of each other. I think that's what made it worse. A few days after that, I passed by that restaurant again on my way to work. I didn't plan to stop, but when I looked through the window, I swear I saw him sitting at the same table. Different girl this time. She was laughing, leaning forward, eyes wide the way mine probably were the first time. He was smiling back, hand resting near the same half-empty wine glass. The waiter who'd recognized him before looked at me through the glass and quickly looked away like he knew what I'd realized. I didn't stick around to see how it ended. The thing about dating apps is that everyone lies a little. You lie about your height, your job, your weekend plans. You try to seem like the best version of yourself, and for a while, I didn't mind that. But then I met Jake, and that small kind of lying turned into something way bigger. When we matched, I wasn't even in the mood to talk to anyone. It was one of those random Sunday nights where boredom just takes over, and before you know it, you scrolled through 30 faces and started talking to a guy who says he loves hiking, even though you can tell he probably hasn't walked anywhere without a coffee in his hand. That was Jake. He was good looking, had that soft kind of confidence where he didn't need to overdo it. His profile was simple, a few photos, a short bio, nothing flashy. He said he worked in real estate, had recently bought his own place, and loved cooking. It all sounded believable enough. We texted every day for about a week, and it just flowed easily. He'd send me pictures of his dinners, ask for music recommendations, and always made a point to check in about how my day went. He was one of those guys who replied fast, which honestly made it feel like he cared. I remember telling my friend he seemed normal, and she laughed because that's apparently rare these days. Every one of his photos had the same background, though. A neatly made bed, a couple of pink pillows, and this beige wall behind it. At first, I didn't really care. I even joked once that his room looked like a Pinterest ad. He said he just liked things tidy. I thought that was kind of cute. Guys usually have beds that look like they've been through a storm. We finally made plans to meet. He picked this Korean barbecue place that was halfway between where we both live. He said he'd been there before, which made sense because he was apparently a big foodie. I remember being nervous but kind of excited. He texted me right before I got there saying he'd grabbed us a table already. When I saw him, I felt that little relief you get when someone actually looks like their pictures. He had that clean kind of look, button-down shirt, nice shoes, the faint smell of cologne that sticks in your mind. He was friendly, attentive, and funny in a quiet way. The conversation just flowed. He talked about growing up out of state, his job, his apartment. Nothing strange, nothing off. It all just felt easy. After dinner, he walked me to my car and hugged me goodbye. He didn't try anything weird or pushy. The next day, he texted that he'd had a great time and wanted to see me again. It felt kind of rare to have something go smoothly for once. Over the next couple of weeks, we kept hanging out. Sometimes we grabbed food, sometimes he'd invite me over to watch a movie. His apartment was exactly like I expected, clean, organized, kind of cozy. But something about it felt too perfect. The walls were bare except for one framed print. The kitchen looked like it had never been used even though he swore he cooked all the time. And those pink pillows were always there, perfectly placed. One night, he told me to make myself comfortable while he went to take a shower. I was scrolling through my phone, half distracted, when I heard another phone ringing. Not his, a different ringtone, coming from somewhere in the living room. I followed the sound and saw a phone sitting under a magazine on the coffee table. The screen lit up with the name Sarah. I froze. My stomach dropped because I had no idea who that was. I didn't touch it. I just sat back down and waited. When he came out, I pretended like nothing happened, but something had shifted. The next morning, he didn't text like usual. No good morning, no plans, just silence. By the second day, I decided to call him. No answer. I texted once, then again later. Still nothing. That sinking feeling just wouldn't go away. A few days later, I got a call from an unknown number. When I picked up, it was a woman's voice. She sounded tired, like she'd said the same thing too many times already. She asked if I knew Jake. I said yeah, kind of confused. She paused for a moment, then said she was his wife. At first, I thought it was some kind of joke. She said she found my number because Jake had left his phone at home. She told me I wasn't the first girl from Tinder to find out about her like this. Apparently, he used their guest room as his apartment whenever she went to visit her sister. The pink pillows I'd noticed were hers. The whole setup, the photos, the clean look, the empty kitchen. All of it was just a stage. I didn't even know what to say. She wasn't angry. just known. She said she'd been trying to leave him for months, but didn't know how. Then she hung up. I just sat there staring at my phone, trying to make sense of everything. I went back on Tinder later that night, partly to block him, partly to see if he deleted his account. He hadn't. Same photos, same bio, same smile. I reported the profile, but it didn't make me feel any better. The worst part was realizing how easily I believed every small thing he said. A week later, my friend texted me a screenshot. It was Jake's profile again, but this time, the background was different. Same bed, same pillows, but now with a dog sitting on it. A new prop for the next story, I guess. I didn't reply to him again. Didn't call, didn't text. I blocked the number, deleted the chat history, and told myself to forget it. But every now and then when I scroll through my photos, I see the one he sent me of his homemade dinner, and I notice the pink pillows blurred in the background. I can't unsee them now. Sometimes I wonder how many girls had noticed those pillows too. How many of us sat on that same couch thinking he was single, while his wife was somewhere waiting for him to come home. It's crazy how someone can live a double life so easily without even trying to hide it properly. I don't use Tinder much anymore. Every time I open the app, I think of that beige wall and those pillows that didn't belong to him. It's not even anger anymore, just that quiet kind of disappointment that sticks around long after the excitement fades. I didn't even want to meet anyone when I matched with Evan. I'd just gotten out of something messy and was basically using Tinder like a distraction, swiping without thinking. Most of the guys on there either had fish pictures or gym selfies, so when I saw someone who actually had a normal face, wearing a hoodie instead of flexing, I stopped. His bio was short, said something about photography, long walks, and finding beauty in everyday things. I rolled my eyes but swiped right anyway. He messaged first, and he wasn't awkward about it like most people. He talked like we already knew each other. Casual but confident. He told me he'd moved to a new apartment recently and was setting up his workspace. He never really explained what that meant, but I assumed it was for his photography. He'd send me random pictures he took, reflections in puddles, people's shoes, street corners with weird lighting. I actually thought they were kind of cool. There was something observant about him, like he noticed details no one else did. We texted for about 3 weeks before we met. He wasn't pushy about it, which I liked. When we finally decided to meet, he suggested I come over to his apartment for coffee. Normally I'd say no to that, but he lived close, and I felt like I knew him a bit already. Plus, he'd sent a selfie with his dog that made him look harmless. That's how they always get you right. They make themselves look harmless first. His building was this old converted warehouse near the train station. The kind of place that looks sketchy from the outside, but has modern flats inside. When he opened the door, the first thing I noticed was how tall he was. Not in a towering way, more like his presence filled the space. He smiled, stepped aside, and told me to come in. His apartment was neat, but not in the clean freak way. Just arranged. Everything looked placed on purpose. The lighting was warm, and there was a faint smell of coffee and something sweet like vanilla. His dog was sleeping near the couch. For the first few minutes, everything seemed fine. Normal, even. He made coffee, and we sat down to talk. He asked about my family, my job, and my hobbies. He remembered weird little things I'd said weeks before, like what kind of cereal I liked. I thought it was kind of sweet that he listened that closely. But the longer I sat there, the more I noticed something odd about the room. The walls weren't bare. They were covered in photos. Not framed, just taped or pinned up in random patterns. At first, I thought it was just part of his photographer thing. But as I looked closer, I realized every single photo was of people. Not posed, not smiling, just random moments. People walking, eating, talking, waiting for buses. All candid. There were dozens of them, maybe hundreds. Some were blurry, some in perfect focus. Most of the faces were women. And then I saw something that made my stomach twist. It was me. A photo of me sitting on a park bench, looking at my phone. My hair was tied up, and I was wearing a jacket I'd worn a couple of weeks earlier. I'd been eating lunch alone that day. I read the photo twice just to make sure. Same jacket, same bag, same background. I didn't say anything right away. I just stared at it, hoping maybe there was some explanation that would make sense. But then I noticed three more photos of me in different outfits, all from angles that looked like they were taken from a distance. He must have noticed where I was looking because he started talking faster. He said he liked documenting every match to understand patterns and attraction, like it was some kind of study. My skin felt cold. It didn't even sound real. I asked him what he meant, but he kept rambling, saying how he'd been doing it for years, and it wasn't creepy because he never touched anyone. He said it was all about observing behavior, how people walk, how they dress, how they react when they think no one's watching. He said he first took my picture before we even met in person. Apparently he saw me at the cafe where I said I worked sometimes, recognized me from Tinder, and followed me for a bit to see if I was authentic. I wanted to leave, but I was frozen. The way he said everything, so calm, so rational, made it worse, like he genuinely didn't think there was anything wrong with it. I mumbled something about needing to use the bathroom just to get up and move. The hallway was lined with even more photos. The deeper I went, the more the images changed. The lighting got darker, the expressions on people's faces more uncomfortable. Some looked like they were trying to walk away from whoever was behind the camera. One photo showed a woman standing outside the same building I was in. Another showed her getting into a car. Then another where she was looking right at the lens mid-expression, like she just realized someone was following her. That's when it hit me. These weren't just pictures of random strangers. These were people he'd met. I went back to the living room, trying not to look panicked. I told him I needed to leave because of an early shift, and he just nodded like it was no big deal. He even offered to walk me to my car. I declined so fast I probably looked rude. The second I got outside, I ran until I was out of sight. My hands were shaking so bad I almost dropped my phone trying to unlock it. I got into my car and locked the doors, and just sat there staring at his window. The next morning, I checked his profile again. Gone. Deleted. But later that week, I got a text from an unknown number. No words, just a picture. It was me walking out of my building that morning. I blocked the number immediately, but my chest felt like it was closing in. I started checking my windows, my phone camera, even my laptop light. I filed a report with the police. They said, unless he directly threatened me, there wasn't much they could do. They said they'd keep it on record. That was it. For a while, I avoided going anywhere alone. I kept my blinds closed, stopped using dating apps, even stopped posting photos online. I don't know if he ever really stopped watching. Maybe he moved on to someone else. Maybe those pictures are still taped to his wall somewhere. Sometimes when I'm walking down the street and feel like someone's eyes are on me, I catch myself wondering if he's still out there with his camera, trying to understand patterns. I never read the word photographer the same way again after that. Hey guys, really sorry to interrupt. If you're still listening, then you're enjoying the story so far. And if you are enjoying, then please hit that like button. That's all I ask of you. Thanks so much. Now back to the stories. The first time I talked to Lucas, it was because of a stupid meme. He had this bio that said something about loving deep conversations and iced coffee, which normally Ed White left on, but one of his pictures showed him holding a cat wearing sunglasses. I don't know why, but it made me laugh, so I sent a message about it. He replied instantly with a sarcastic joke, and it kind of spiraled from there. He wasn't like the usual Tinder guys who either tried to flirt too fast or didn't know how to hold a normal conversation. Lucas was smart, but not in a show-off way. He'd send me voice notes of him talking about random things, like how he thought coffee tasted better in rainy weather, or how people who say, "Let's just see where this goes," never actually mean it. It all felt comfortable, like talking to someone who already knew your rhythm. We talked for about 2 weeks before meeting. He knew I liked this cafe near the station, a small one with plants hanging from the ceiling and mismatched mugs. I used to go there to work on stuff or read when I needed a quiet space. When I told him that, he said it'd be the perfect place for a first date because he wanted to see why I liked it so much. When I got there, he was already sitting by the window waiting with 2 drinks. He waved like we'd known each other for years. He'd ordered for me an iced caramel latte and even got the right milk, which I thought was impressive since I'd only mentioned it once in passing during a chat. At first, everything felt normal. He was easy to talk to, funny, and just present in a way people rarely are anymore. He had this calmness about him that made you feel like you could talk about anything. But then, as we kept talking, he started saying things that I knew I never told him. He mentioned how my dad used to take me to the park every Sunday when I was little, which was true. Then he brought up that I used to doodle on my school notebooks whenever I was stressed. That one stopped me mid-sip because that was something I only mentioned once to my therapist. I kind of laughed it off, thinking maybe he had said it without realizing. But the more he talked, the more he kept saying little details. My favorite childhood book, the name of my first pet, the fact that I sometimes can't sleep when it rains because the sound reminds me of something bad that happened years ago. There was no way he could have known all that. At one point, I asked how he remembered so much, and he said he just had a good memory for things that mattered. It sounded flattering, but it also made my chest tighten a bit. I tried to shake it off and focus on enjoying the moment. Then came the weirdest part. He mentioned my therapist's name, out loud. He said it like it was just casual conversation, saying how he'd heard good things about her and how she really helps people open up. I froze. I didn't even have her full name listed anywhere public. My stomach dropped. I asked him how he knew that, but he just smiled and said, "You told me." Except I hadn't. I knew I hadn't. The rest of the date felt tense after that. He acted like nothing was wrong, kept the conversation light, paid the bill, and even offered me a ride home. I said I was fine walking, but he insisted. I didn't want to make it weird, so I agreed, even though something deep down told me to just leave. In the car, I kept quiet. He played music softly, nothing creepy, just some lo-fi stuff. When we got to my street, he parked and turned to me like he wanted to say something. Then he said, "I didn't mean to scare you. I just like knowing who I'm really talking to." That sentence stuck in my head the whole night. I barely slept. The next day, I kept thinking about it. I went through our old messages, wondering if I'd slipped up somewhere and told him those things without realizing. I hadn't. So I opened my email, typed his name, and tried to see if anything came up. Nothing. Then I remembered something he'd said earlier that week, that he worked in tech. He'd offered to look over my portfolio because I'd been applying for jobs. I'd sent him a link to my online resume. I opened it again and scrolled down, and that's when I saw it. There was a section that said, "Additional files," where I'd once uploaded a few sample documents for previous employers. One of those was a link to my Google Drive, the same drive that also had a folder I'd completely forgotten about. Old therapy notes my therapist used to send me for reference. Stuff that went back years. Things I'd written about trauma, family, relationships, everything. The folder wasn't private. Anyone with the link could open it. My chest went cold. I clicked on the shared section. His email was there. He'd accessed it a week before our first date. I didn't even want to believe it at first. I thought maybe it was an error or some old access from someone else. But the more I looked, the clearer it got. He'd been inside that folder, reading everything I'd ever said in confidence. That's how he knew everything. I felt sick. It wasn't just creepy. It felt like someone had stolen a piece of me. All the stuff I'd written thinking it would stay between me and my therapist. Now it was just sitting in the hands of some guy I barely knew. I blocked his number instantly and deleted the entire Drive folder. I told my therapist what happened, and even she was shocked. She said it was a major breach of privacy and that I should report it, so I did. But here's the thing. The police didn't take it seriously. They said it wasn't technically a crime unless he used the information to threaten me or cause harm. They said it was just unauthorized access, like that made it less disgusting. For a week, I kept expecting him to text me again. He didn't, but that almost made it worse because I never knew if he was done or if he was still out there, reading through old copies for saving screenshots. One night, I was walking home from work and saw someone standing by the bus stop across the road. It was raining, so I couldn't see clearly, but the shape of the coat looked like his. I told myself I was imagining it and walked faster. Then later that night, I got an email. No subject line. No message body. Just one attached file. It was a PDF, one of my old therapy documents. The title was Session 5, Boundaries. I didn't even open it. I just deleted the entire email and turned off my laptop. After that, I moved all my files offline, changed every password, even made a new email. I told myself it was over, that he'd just gotten bored and then moved on. But sometimes weird things still happen. Like one morning, I got a text from an unknown number that said, "You're braver now." That's something I'd written once in one of my therapy reflections. It wasn't even a quote. It was just a line to myself. I never replied, but I didn't sleep for days after that. Every noise outside made me jump. Every time I logged into anything, I checked for suspicious logins. It's exhausting, living like that. It's been months now. I deleted every dating app and started going to therapy again, just to process the whole thing. My therapist says it's good I'm facing it instead of running from it, but sometimes I wonder if it's even a way to fully get past something like that. Luke has made me realize that privacy isn't just about passwords or locked folders. It's about the illusion that some things about you can stay untouched. He stripped that illusion completely. I still pass by that cafe sometimes on my way to work. It's weird. It used to feel safe, like my quiet place. Now every time I see it, I think about how he sat there across from me, smiling, pretending to just be curious when he already knew everything about me. Sometimes I imagine confronting him, asking why he did it, but I don't think I get an honest answer. He'd probably twist it again, make it sound like some experiment or good intention. People like that always do. There's this memory that won't leave my head, the way he said my therapist's name, so casually, like it was something he had the right to know. I read that moment over and over in my mind, like if I analyze it enough times, it'll stop feeling real. But it always does. I'm more careful now. I double check every document, every setting, every app I use. But no matter how many things I delete or change, it doesn't erase the fact that someone once had access to every private thought I ever wrote down. I don't live with the same kind of trust anymore. Not with apps, not with people, not even with myself sometimes. Because the truth is, once someone crosses that invisible line between curiosity and invasion, there's no getting that part of you back. And every time I open a new document or click share, I still feel that hesitation, that question that won't leave me alone, wondering who's watching this time. I've always been a bit careless with my phone. Dropped it more times than I can count, never updated the software, reused the same password for almost everything. My friends used to joke that one day someone would hack me just for fun. I used to laugh about it. But then I met Brandon, and suddenly none of it felt like a joke anymore. He wasn't my usual type, which is probably why I gave him a chance in the first place. Most of the guys I talked to on Tinder were loud, self-absorbed, or just exhausting. Brandon was different. He had this calm, serious look to him, dark hair, black t-shirt in every photo, and that half smile that looked like he knew something you didn't. His bio just said, work in tech. Hate small talk. I remember swiping right mostly because I was bored at work. He messaged first, asking what phone I used. It was such a weird opener that I almost unmatched him, but he followed it up by saying he was just curious because he worked in cybersecurity. I told him I had an iPhone, nothing special. He said that was a good start. I didn't know what that meant, but he was funny about it, so I let it slide. The first few conversations were easy. He was one of those people who could make anything sound interesting, even boring stuff like data privacy or coding. I wasn't really into tech, but the way he talked about it made it sound cool, like he saw the world through a lens of patterns and logic. I guess that's what drew me in. After a couple of weeks, he asked if I wanted to meet in person. He suggested this rooftop bar in the city that had string lights and soft music, not too loud, not too fancy. I said sure. When I got there, he was already waiting. He stood up, smiled, and hugged me like we met before. He had that quiet kind of confidence, the kind that doesn't need to prove anything. He talked more than I expected, but it wasn't annoying. He asked a lot of questions, though, about my job, my family, how long I'd been living in the city, even what kind of apps I'd used the most. I figured he was just curious. By the end of the night, I felt like I'd known him for months. He walked me to the train station and texted me when I got home, saying he had a great time. It was simple, but it made me smile. We started seeing each other regularly after that. He was thoughtful, reliable, and somehow always knew when I was stressed. Sometimes he'd message me before I'd even told him something was wrong. He'd say things like rough day, and I'd laugh because, yeah, it always was. After a few dates, he offered to help secure my phone. He said it was something he did for his clients all the time, checking settings, updating permissions, making sure there weren't any hidden tracking apps or leaks. I didn't really think much of it. He seemed like he knew what he was doing, and I trusted him. He even explained how easy it was for hackers to get into people's phones, so I handed mine over. He plugged it into his laptop, typing quickly while explaining what he was doing. He said he was setting up a secure backup and cleaning out useless data. I wasn't paying that much attention. I was too busy scrolling through the dessert menu. It took about 10 minutes, and when he handed it back, everything looked the same. He told me my phone was safer now. That was the night everything started to feel a little off. A few days later, I noticed weird things. My phone battery drained faster. My messages would sometimes show as read when I hadn't opened them yet. I figured it was just some update glitch, but then things got stranger. He started finishing my sentences, literally. I'd start telling him something, and he'd say, "Yeah, I know, you mentioned that to your friend earlier." Except I hadn't told him yet. I texted my friend about it a few hours earlier. At first, I thought it was a coincidence, but it kept happening. I'd get into small arguments with friends, and he'd somehow bring up the exact things I'd said in private chats. Once, he even mentioned something about a conversation I had with my sister that I knew for sure I'd never told him about. I asked him how he knew all that stuff, and he laughed it off, saying I was predictable. But the way he said it, that small smirk he gave, didn't feel like a joke. That's when I started paying attention. One night, I left my phone on the table while I went to shower. When I came back, it was unlocked. Brandon said he was just checking the time, but my home screen had shifted slightly. A few apps were in different spots. He noticed me noticing and said I was being paranoid. A week later, I decided to test something. I sent a fake text to my friend saying I'd gotten a new tattoo. I didn't post about it or mention it to anyone else. The next day, Brandon texted me out of nowhere. "So, where's the tattoo?" I stared at the screen for almost a full minute. My hands actually started to shake. That's when it hit me. He wasn't guessing. He knew. Somehow he had access to my messages. That night, I confronted him. He didn't deny it. He said he'd cloned my messages for safety. That word still makes me angry. Safety. He said he'd set up a mirroring system when he secured my phone, so that everything I sent or received automatically backed up to his encrypted drive. He said it was so he could protect me from bad people. It didn't even sound real. My stomach was twisting, but he just sat there like he was explaining how to fix a printer. I asked if he could see everything. My photos, my calls, my location. And he said, of course, that's part of security. I told him to delete it, but he said it wasn't that simple. He said I'd have to trust him. The next morning, I went to the Apple store and told them what happened. They ran a check and said my device had been accessed remotely using a cloning app. They said whoever set it up would needed my passcode and cable access, which he had both. They reset everything and helped me set up two-factor authentication. For a few days, I thought it was over, but then strange things started again. I'd get text notifications from numbers I didn't recognize, all blank. Sometimes my phone would light up in the middle of the night, showing the call from unknown that stopped after one ring. One night, I got a text from him. A single sentence. "You should change your lock screen photo." The one I had was a picture I'd taken just an hour earlier of my dog. It wasn't posted anywhere. He must have seen it through the camera. I went to the police the next day. They told me unless he was threatening me, there wasn't much they could do. They said I should keep records and avoid contact. I felt like an idiot sitting there, explaining how a guy I dated cloned my phone like some kind of sci-fi movie villain. They didn't even take notes seriously. So I changed my number, wiped my phone again, and deleted every account I could. I told myself it was done. But about 2 weeks later, I got a message from a new number that just said, "Still here." I didn't reply. I went out and bought a new phone entirely, new with SIM, new everything. I even changed my email. But you can't really shake that feeling once it's there. Every time I get a notification now, I flinch a little. Every time my screen lights up unexpectedly, my stomach tightens. I started leaving my phone in another room when I sleep. I stopped sending personal messages, even to my closest friends. It's crazy how someone can make you paranoid without ever touching you. He didn't need to break into my house or threaten me to get inside my life. He just needed a cable and 10 minutes of my trust. A few months after everything, I was scrolling through a tech forum trying to understand more about cloning software, and I stumbled across a thread where someone was talking about monitoring relationship trust. They described it like a harmless tool for tracking communication consistency. The example screenshots in the thread looked exactly like my old text layout. The username on that post was b_tech. It's been almost a year now. I've changed phones twice, switched carriers, even moved apartments. But every time I get a new device, there's this split second when I turn it on, that flash of fear that maybe it's already compromised. I don't go on dating apps anymore. I tell people I just needed a break. But the truth is, I can't bring myself to trust anyone with even the smallest piece of personal info. It's like every message I send has someone else's eyes behind it. Sometimes I still wonder what he was really getting from it. If it was control, curiosity, or something darker. But I try not to think about him anymore. Because the second I start wondering, I start looking for signs again, like checking my phone logs, scanning Bluetooth connections, or searching my own name online just to make sure it's still mine. He said he worked in security, and maybe in a way he did. He just wasn't securing me. He was securing control. Now, when people talk about privacy or say they don't care who reads their messages, I want to tell them how wrong they are. I want to tell them how easy it is to let someone in. I wasn't even planning to meet anyone serious when I matched with Megan. I just downloaded Tinder again after a breakup that left me tired of everything. I told myself I just wanted something casual, a few laughs, maybe a drink or two with someone who didn't take life too seriously. She seemed like that kind of person. Her bio was short and funny. Her pictures were natural, no filters, no angles that screamed try hard. Just a normal looking girl with messy blonde hair, freckles, and a smile that looked unbothered by everything. She messaged first, saying something about how I looked like I owned too many hoodies, which made me laugh because it was true. From the start, she had this sarcastic sense of humor that kind of pulled me in. We talked nonstop that night about movies, bad dates, our favorite snacks, random stuff. She told me she worked in marketing but did photography on the side. She said she liked people who didn't take life too seriously, and I remember thinking, finally, someone normal. After a few days, she asked if I wanted to grab coffee. She picked this cafe near her place that I'd never been to. When I got there, she was already sitting outside, wearing sunglasses and sipping something iced even though it was cold. She waved at me, and when I sat down, she didn't waste time with awkward small talk. It was like we were already in the middle of a conversation we've been having forever. She was loud in a fun way. She talked with her hands, swore a lot, and didn't care if people around us stared. She was different from most people I'd dated before, confident to the point of reckless. I liked it. She was one of those people who could make you feel like you were the only person in the room. We started seeing each other more after that. Sometimes we'd meet for lunch, sometimes she'd come over, and we'd order food and just talk for hours. She'd take pictures of everything. The food, me, even random shadows on the wall. She said she had an eye for aesthetics, which I believed because her Instagram looked like a curated magazine. The first red flag came when she posted a story of us together without asking. It wasn't anything bad, just our drinks on the table and my hand in the frame, but it caught me off guard. I didn't mind being posted, but we'd only known each other for a couple of weeks. It just felt fast. I told her it was fine, but asked if she could maybe ask next time. She laughed and said I was acting like a celebrity. I let it go. Over time, she started calling me her guy in comments and tagging me in random memes about relationships. It was kind of flattering, but also a bit much. My friends teased me about it, but I brushed it off. I liked her. She made everything feel exciting, unpredictable. Then one night, we were sitting in my car after dinner, and she asked where things were going. I told her honestly that I wasn't ready for anything serious yet. I said I liked her, but I didn't want to rush into a relationship. She got quiet for a moment, nodded, and said she respected that. I thought we were fine. We weren't. The next morning, my phone started blowing up with notifications. At first, I thought it was a group chat or something, but when I opened Facebook, my stomach dropped. Someone had tagged my name in a post, and it was from Megan. The post said, "Imagine wasting your time on someone who says he's not ready for a relationship while texting 5 other girls." Underneath, she'd attached screenshots, actual screenshots of our private chats. Some of them were cropped to make me look worse, but even the normal ones were enough to embarrass me. She posted inside this local community group that had thousands of members. People were already commenting. Some were laughing, others were defending me, but most were calling me every name in the book. She tagged my employer too. My company's name was right there. She even mentioned where I worked in the caption. I wanted to throw up. I tried calling her, but she didn't pick up. She messaged me instead, saying, "Now you know how it feels to be played." Played? We weren't even together. I read the message over and over, trying to figure out how she got that idea. I deleted my Facebook right after that, but the damage was already done. My coworker saw the post before I could even react. I got pulled aside by my manager, who said he didn't care about my personal life, but that it was creating an uncomfortable situation. I wanted to explain, but there was no point. Once something's on the internet, it's not yours anymore. I called my friend Mia to ask if she could check the post. She said it was still up but getting shared around. Apparently, Megan had also posted it on her Instagram story and tagged my account. She'd written "liars get exposed" in big letters. I spent the whole day trying to breathe normally. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I went through our old texts, trying to figure out what she could have twisted to make it seem like I was leading her on. There was nothing bad there. I'd been honest the whole time. That night, she finally unblocked me just to send one last message: "You shouldn't have wasted my time." Then she blocked me again. For the next few days, I kept checking her profile from a friend's account. She didn't delete the post. She doubled down. She started posting quotes about fake people and men who can't commit. I wanted to comment so badly to defend myself, but I knew it would only make it worse. Eventually, the post stopped trending, but the screenshots were still floating around. A friend sent me a screenshot of someone reposting it in another group weeks later with the caption, "Men like this give me trust issues." My name blurred out, but still visible if you look close. It's insane how something can spiral that fast. One conversation, one word she didn't like, and suddenly I was a villain on the internet. I thought about reporting her post, but she blurred enough things to make it technically not break any rules. Facebook said it didn't violate community standards. My job never formally wrote me up, but the way people looked at me after that was enough. Every time I walked into work, I felt like they were talking about it. Months went by and I tried to move on. I deleted all my dating apps, locked down my social media, and even changed my name on Instagram to something random. I didn't post anything for a long time. Then one day I had a message from someone I didn't know. It said, "Hey, is this the guy from Megan's post?" I didn't reply, but I could feel my chest tightening again. I realized it didn't matter if the post was old. The internet doesn't forget. A few weeks later, I saw her again in person. It was at a supermarket near my place. She was standing in the frozen section, scrolling through her phone like nothing ever happened. My instinct was to turn and leave, but before I could, she looked up and saw me. She smiled like it was just another day. No guilt, no awkwardness, just that same confident smirk. She said hi, like nothing had happened. I didn't answer. I just walked away. My hands were shaking again, and all I could think about was how easily she destroyed months of peace for a few likes and comments. Later that night, I read through our old chats one last time before deleting everything. It wasn't closure, but it felt like cutting a cord that had been wrapped around my neck for too long. It's strange how public revenge feels so personal. It wasn't just about being exposed. It was about how she'd taken private, quiet parts of me and turned them into entertainment. She wanted to hurt me in a way that lasted, and she succeeded. Now, whenever someone sends me a message that feels even slightly off, I freeze. I double think every word I type. I imagine it being screenshot, edited, twisted, and shared with strangers. It's exhausting living like that. I don't think Megan even feels bad. I think for her it was about control, making sure she got the last word, making sure she was the one who ended it, even if it meant burning everything down in the process. There's a difference between heartbreak and humiliation. Heartbreak fades, but humiliation sticks around. It lives in screenshots and memories and people's whispers. It's been over a year now, and sometimes I still get friend requests from random accounts that look fake. I don't know if it's her or just someone who saw that old post and wants to stir it up again. Either way, I ignore them all. Every time I see someone post about their relationship online now, I scroll past it. I don't comment, don't react. I don't trust that what's private will stay private anymore. Megan taught me that the internet has a way of keeping scars open. You can delete the post, block the person, move on with your life, but somewhere out there, your words are still floating around, waiting to resurface. I don't hate her. Not really, I just wish I'd seen it coming. How someone could turn something real into a weapon with a few taps on a screen. And every time I see my reflection in my phone screen now, I still wonder who's screenshotting who. When I matched with Dylan, I almost ignored his message. His profile picture looked like every other guy who claims to be different. Clean haircut, bright smile, dog in the photo, quote in the bio about kindness. But there was something about the way he messaged. Calm, patient, not desperate for attention. He said he worked part-time as a volunteer at a hospital, helping with mental health outreach. It sounded mature, maybe even too mature, but I decided to give it a shot. He wasn't my usual type. He was quiet, not awkward, but measured. Every time I sent something funny, he'd respond with thought-out sentences instead of emojis or lol. He talked about mindfulness, about how people carry more pain than they admit. Normally I find that kind of talk boring, but with him, it didn't feel forced. It felt like he actually meant it. He asked good questions too. Not the usual "what do you do" kind, but stuff like what helped me feel grounded when life got overwhelming. I told him sometimes I go for walks late at night, just to clear my head. He said that was healthy. I remember thinking how rare it was for someone to actually listen instead of just waiting to talk. We texted for about 2 weeks before we met up. He picked a quiet cafe near the train station. It was small and dimly lit, and mostly empty, which I liked because it didn't feel like one of those crowded spots where everyone's trying too hard. When I walked in, I spotted him immediately. He looked exactly like his photos. Neat haircut, plain clothes, calm energy. He smiled when he saw me and stood up to hug me. He smelled clean, like soap and coffee. We sat near the window, and right away he started asking how I'd been. Not in the fake way, like he actually cared. I told him about work, my messed up sleep schedule, how I'd been trying to read more, but kept getting distracted. He told me about the hospital, how he started volunteering after his dad passed away. He said he wanted to give back. The conversation flowed easily. He made eye contact when he spoke, didn't check his phone once, and when he listened, he really listened. The kind of attention that makes you feel seen. For a while, it felt normal. He asked if I'd ever been to therapy. I said yeah, years ago after something rough I went through. He didn't pry, just nodded and said it helped a lot of people. Then he mentioned the name a local hospital and said it was where he volunteered. I didn't think much of it. It was one I'd been to before. That place has thousands of patients, so it didn't mean anything. After that first date, we started seeing each other more. Coffee, movies, walks. He wasn't overly romantic, but he had this calm presence that felt steady. I felt like I could trust him. He'd ask about my week, about my mood, about my family, but never in a way that felt controlling. Just gentle curiosity. One night, after we'd been seeing each other for about a month, we were watching a movie at his place. I got up to grab something from the kitchen, and when I came back, I noticed a folder sitting on the table. It had hospital paperwork sticking out of it. Nothing strange since he volunteered there. But when I glanced down, I saw a familiar name printed on one of the forms. My own. It didn't register at first. I thought maybe I was seeing things. I looked closer, and there it was. My name, my date of birth, the department I'd been in years ago. It was from the hospital's mental health unit. My stomach tightened. He came to the room before I could pick it up. He saw where I was looking and froze for a second. Then, calm as ever, he said, "I was going to tell you." I didn't know what that meant. Tell me what? My mind started racing. I asked him how he had that file. He said he hadn't meant to make me uncomfortable, that he recognized me the first time we matched. Recognized me? He said he remembered my face from the hospital, that he'd been volunteering in the same ward I'd been admitted to years ago. I just stared at him, trying to understand what he was saying. He told me he saw my name on the intake sheet back then, that I seemed kind, and that when he saw me again on Tinder, he felt like it was a sign. A sign. I wanted to throw up. I asked him how long he'd known. He said from the first day we matched. He said he'd been waiting for the right moment to tell me, that he didn't want me to think he was weird. We sat there in silence for a minute. I could feel my pulse in my ears. He started explaining himself, saying he hadn't done anything wrong, that all the files were old, that he'd only looked because he wanted to understand me better. He said he read some of the notes, but only the surface-level stuff. He said he cared. I couldn't move. The idea of someone I was dating having access to my personal medical history, things I'd told doctors in confidence, things that weren't anyone's business, it made me feel sick. He started apologizing, saying he didn't mean to cross boundaries, that he just wanted to connect. He tried to touch my arm, but I stepped back. I left that night without saying much. He texted me later, apologizing again, saying he'd delete everything, that he'd never meant to hurt me. I didn't reply. For a few days, I just felt numb. I kept replaying all our conversations in my head. Every time he'd said something that felt oddly specific, every time he'd seemed to know what I was feeling before I said it. It all made sense now. He hadn't been guessing. He read about it. I didn't know what to do. I called the hospital and asked to speak to someone about confidentiality. They said volunteers shouldn't have access to patient files. They said they'd look into it. That was the last I heard from them. A week later, I got a letter in the mail. It was from the hospital saying they found no evidence of misconduct, but that my records had been reviewed by authorized personnel. They didn't name him. They didn't say sorry. They just told me my privacy remained protected. I deleted his number and locked him on everything, but every once in a while, I'd get an email from an address I didn't recognize. The first one said, "I didn't mean to scare you." The second said, "You're stronger than you think." I stopped opening them after that. It's weird how something like that changes you. I used to think vulnerability was about trust, that if someone was gentle and patient, they deserved to know the real you. Now I think it's about control. Who holds your information? Who knows what about you? Who decides how much of you gets exposed? Every time I fill out a form now, even for a dentist appointment, I pause before writing my name. I imagine someone like him sitting in a back room, flipping through files, recognizing a face, thinking it's fate. I don't go near that hospital anymore. Even driving past it makes me feel like I can't breathe. My friends told me to go to the police, but I didn't. I didn't want to relive it to explain how some guy recognized me from my file and somehow thought that made it okay to date me. It sounds insane when you say it out loud. Sometimes I think about the moment he told me how calm he was, like he genuinely didn't see it as wrong. That's what makes it worse. He thought it was a connection story, a coincidence. The truth is, I've forgotten most of what happened at that hospital. It was years ago, and I'd worked hard to move on. But now, all of it's back in my head. The sounds, the smells, the feeling of being small and exposed. He pulled me right back into it without even realizing. I try not to think about him now. I deleted every message, every photo, everything that could remind me. But sometimes I'll see someone with the same kind of haircut, the same calm way of talking, and my chest tightens. I don't date anymore. I tell people I'm taking time for myself, but the truth is, I just don't want to hand over pieces of myself to anyone again. There's a line that stuck with me, something my therapist once said when I first started recovering: healing is about safety. I thought I'd found that with him. Instead, I learned that even safety can be an illusion. He told me he volunteered because he wanted to help people feel less alone. But I think maybe he just wanted to keep them close enough to study, understand, to hold a piece of them that no one else could touch. That's what it felt like he'd stolen something invisible. I don't think he ever saw it as wrong. He probably still tells people the same story about how he met this girl and how fate brought them together. Maybe he even believes it. But I know better. It wasn't fate. It was access. And that's what scares me the most. That people like him can hide behind good intentions, behind words like care and help, and still cross lines that can't be uncrossed. Sometimes late at night, I'll get an email notification. I don't open it. I just stare at the sender name, half expecting it to be him again. I never find out. I delete them without checking. Because I've learned something important. You don't always need to read the message to know it's not safe. I matched with Alex on a random Wednesday night when I was half asleep and bored. Her profile stood out immediately. She wasn't doing that over-edited influencer thing everyone else seemed to be doing. Her photos looked real. Messy bun, oversized hoodie, no filter. Her bio said something about liking weird conversations and even weirder people. I swiped right mostly because she looked like someone who'd actually have something to say. She matched instantly. Her first message wasn't the usual "hey." She said, "You look like someone who judges people's music taste." I laughed and said she wasn't wrong. She sent a playlist within 5 minutes, all indie and old school rock. I liked her confidence. She didn't text like someone trying to impress me. She texted like she already knew she was interesting. She told me she worked in media, which could mean anything these days. She said she did audio production and creative freelancing. I didn't ask for details, but she hinted she was working on something big, a long-term creative project. We talked for about a week before she suggested we meet. She picked this small cafe downtown, one of those indie ones where everyone's either studying or pretending to write a screenplay. When I got there, she was already sitting by the window, sipping something iced, earphones hanging from her neck. She waved, smiled, and closed her laptop as I sat down. She looked exactly like her pictures, maybe better. She had short dark hair, bright eyes, and this sort of bold presence that made you feel like you were already in her world. Right from the start, she led the conversation. Not in a controlling way, more like she had a rhythm and I just fell into it. She asked a lot of deep, random questions, not small talk. Stuff like, when was the last time you completely changed your mind about something? And do you ever catch yourself acting differently around people you like? It was weirdly refreshing. Most dates feel like an interview. This one felt like a therapy session with good coffee. She laughed easily, paid attention when I talked, and even took notes on her phone once when I mentioned something funny. When I asked why, she said she liked remembering quotable moments. I didn't think much of it. Some people journal, maybe that was her thing. Over the next few weeks, we kept meeting up. Sometimes it was coffee, sometimes drinks, sometimes just long walks through the city. She was unpredictable in a fun way. One night she'd talk about art, the next she'd start analyzing why people ghost each other. But after about a month, I started noticing something strange. Everywhere we went, she'd bump into someone she knew. Not just once or twice, every single time. A guy at a restaurant, a girl at the park, someone in a bookstore. She'd smile, say hi, exchange a few words, then go right back to talking to me. At first, I thought she was just social, but after the fifth time, it felt rehearsed. Then one evening, I found out what was really going on. We were sitting in her apartment, eating takeout and listening to music. She excused herself to grab something from her desk, and while she was gone, her laptop screen lit up. I wasn't snooping, but the page on her screen caught my eye. It was a web dashboard for a podcast site. The title said, Modern Love, Unfiltered Conversations. And right there in the episode list was one titled, The Mirroring Game. Curiosity got the better of me. I clicked play. It started with her voice. Calm, confident, familiar. She was talking about how people act differently when they're being observed. She mentioned dating apps and how people perform versions of themselves. Then she said something that made my chest tighten. She said, the subject I've been meeting lately is fascinating. He tries hard not to overshare, but his body language says everything. My stomach dropped. She didn't use my name, but it was obvious she was talking about me. Same stories, same jokes, same little details I'd told her. When she came back into the room, I paused the audio and asked, what is this? She froze for a second, then laughed like it was no big deal. She said it was a creative project she'd been doing for months, a podcast about modern dating habits. She said she used real experiences, but kept everything anonymous. I didn't know what to say. She sounded proud of it, like she didn't even realize how weird it was. I asked if she told me I was part of it. She shrugged and said she didn't need to because she changed all the identifying stuff. It wasn't malicious. She wasn't yelling or defensive. She genuinely thought it was fine, like I should be flattered that I was interesting enough to analyze. I didn't want to argue, so I left early. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about how she'd written things down on her phone during our dates, how she met all those random people in public, how calm she always was when asking personal questions. I realized she hadn't been dating me. She'd been documenting me. The next morning, I checked her podcast again. The episode already had hundreds of plays. People in the comments were praising her for being brutally honest and insightful. They didn't know they were listening to pieces of real people stitched together. I texted her, asking her to take it down. She replied, it's already part of the project. You'll thank me when you hear the final version. That's when I blocked her. A few days later, one of my friends sent me a clip from TikTok. It was a snippet from the same podcast. Alexa's voice again. And in the background, I heard something that made my stomach twist. My laugh. It wasn't just her retelling what I said. She recorded parts of our actual conversations. I couldn't believe it. It wasn't like she'd done it to hurt me. It was just this cold, artistic detachment. Like she didn't see people as people, just as material. I reported the podcast platform, and eventually that specific episode disappeared. But I never got confirmation of why. I figured maybe they took it down, or maybe she just replaced it with something new. Either way, she disappeared from my life completely after that. A few months later, her podcast popped up again under a different name. New branding, new tone, but the same voice. This time, it was called The Heart of the Matter, and one of the episode descriptions mentioned emotional projection during romantic encounters. I didn't even click it. I didn't need to. Now, whenever I meet someone new, I take longer to trust them. I don't like when people take notes or mention they work in media. It's not paranoia, it's just caution. It's weird how something that seemed harmless at first, a confident girl with a microphone, ended up making me rethink every conversation I have. Sometimes I wonder if she's still doing it, if someone else out there is unknowingly part of her next study. And maybe somewhere in her next episode she's still talking about me, the guy who stopped answering her messages, the one she said, lost interest halfway through, not realizing I just didn't want to be a storyline anymore. It's strange, but I caught myself double thinking everything I say now. Like if someone were to quote me out of context, what would it sound like? That's what Alex did. She made me self-aware in a way that's not healthy. Every silence feels like it's being recorded. Every laugh feels like it's being analyzed. And the worst part is, she didn't even see it as wrong. For her, it was art. For me, it was exposure. You ever get that weird gut feeling when something seems too easy? Like when things are going well, but it's too smooth, and your brain just starts waiting for the crash. That's how it was with Noah. I wasn't looking for anything serious at the time. I'd just moved into a new apartment, new job, new everything. Tinder was just a way to talk to people, kill time, maybe grab a drink or two on weekends. That's all it was supposed to be. Noah's profile popped up one night when I couldn't sleep. He looked normal, I guess. Jeans, plain t-shirt, messy brown hair, and this small grin like he was in on a joke no one else knew. His bio just said, always on time, even when I'm late. It didn't make sense, but somehow it caught my attention. I swiped right without thinking much of it. He messaged a few hours later, early in the morning, something simple like, you seem chill. Want to grab a drink this weekend? No cheesy line, no weird opener. I said yeah. He picked this bar downtown that I'd never been to before. Small place with old furniture and low lighting. He said he liked places that didn't feel like work, whatever that meant. When I got there, he was already sitting at the bar, sipping a beer. He smiled when he saw me and waved me over. He wasn't the kind of attractive that makes your jaw drop, more like the quiet kind that grows on you. Calm voice, steady eye contact, easy laugh. The first half hour flew by. He was funny but subtle about it, confident without being full of himself. He asked a lot of questions, but in a way that didn't feel like an interview. He made everything sound interesting, even when he talked about boring stuff like his commute or office coffee. But there was something about the way he kept checking his watch that stood out. Every 20 minutes or so, his eyes flicked to it. Not like he was bored, more like he was waiting for something. I joked about it once, and he said he had a bad habit of time tracking. I thought he just meant he was punctual. We stayed for about 2 hours. When I said I should head out, he smiled, leaned back, and said, "You're fun to talk to. Let's do this again soon." Then he paid for both drinks, left cash on the table, and walked me to my car. It was all very normal. Except the next day, he didn't text. No, had a great time. No follow-up. I figured maybe he wasn't into it. Fine. Happens all the time. But then that night, he messaged out of nowhere. Not hey or how's your day. Just, you've lasted longer than most. I stared at my phone for a full minute, trying to figure out what that meant. I replied asking what he meant by that, but he didn't answer. He left me on read. The next day, curiosity got the better of me, so I went on Reddit, because of course that's what you do when you're overthinking. I typed his name in just to see if anything came up. I wasn't expecting to find anything, but I did. There was a thread in this dating subreddit, something like weekend challenges, the quick game. It was filled with guys posting screenshots of Tinder combos and bragging about their stats. Most of it was gross, like who could get a date fastest or get a match to meet in person first. Then I saw his username. It wasn't exactly his full name, but close enough that I knew. Same profile picture, same jokes he'd made to me. The thread he posted was titled, "Met her in under 48 hours." I clicked on it, and there it was, parts of our conversation. Cropped screenshots, timestamps, the bar name blurred out. He wrote, "She's smart, sarcastic, not clingy, but I can get her to go home within 2 hours. My stomach dropped. I scrolled through the comments, and they were all encouraging him. Laughing, placing bets, some saying, I'd give it 90 minutes. Others said, you got this, bro. Then there was an update from the same username. Didn't take her home. Still, 10/10 combo. Might try again next week. I felt my face go hot. It was like I'd been turned into a stork. He hadn't asked me out because he liked me. He did it for a bet. I kept scrolling, and that's when I saw something worse. He'd been doing this for months. Post after post of different girls, all written like they were parts of some game. He even had a system. He'd log the time between matching and meeting, rate the difficulty, and describe the ending. I saw one where he literally said, she cried, my fault maybe. I wanted to throw up. I took screenshots of everything, but it didn't help. I blocked him on Tinder, deleted our chat, and told myself I was done. But I couldn't stop thinking about how casual he'd been that night, like the whole thing was just another run. For days, I kept checking that Reddit thread. New comments kept popping up, new posts from other guys using the same format. They all treated dating like a leaderboard. I'd see usernames hyping each other up, sharing tips. I felt disgusting for even having been part of it. Then, about a week later, he texted again. He said, did you see it? I didn't reply. He sent another, you weren't supposed to. Then another, don't worry, you did great. My chest went cold. I blocked his number immediately, but the messages stayed burned in my head. A few days after that, I went back on Reddit, and the post was gone. His account too. Deleted. But by then, I didn't even care. The damage was already done. I told one of my friends about it, and she said I should report him. But to who? There's no rule against being a terrible person. There was no proof he'd done anything illegal, just something twisted. For weeks, I couldn't stop replaying the date. Every smile, every question, every glance at his watch. I realized that's what he was doing, tracking the time, measuring how long it would take before I said yes to something, before I laughed, before I let my guard down. It wasn't a conversation to him. It was data. I deleted Tinder after that. I couldn't even look at the app without feeling my stomach twist. I started doubting everyone. Every hey felt like bait. Every compliment felt like a setup. But it didn't stop there. A month later, someone sent me a link to another Reddit thread. Different account name, but the same format. I clicked it, and there it was again. Another post, same tone, same kind of joke about timing. The comments were calling it the Noah method. It was him. He just made a new account. I don't know why I opened it, but I did. And at the bottom of the post, he wrote, everyone's playing games. I'm just honest about it. That line stuck with me. I wanted to be angry, but mostly I felt exhausted. Because maybe in some way he wasn't wrong. Everyone does play games, just not like that. Still, the thought that someone out there might be timing me, documenting me, betting on me, it ruined something. Months later, I went on a date with someone new. Nice guy, totally different. But halfway through, he looked at his watch, and without even thinking, I froze. My brain went straight back to that bar and that look, that timer counting down in someone's head. I told him I wasn't feeling well and left early. I never texted him again. That's what No did. Not just to me, but probably to everyone he met. He made dating feel like a trap, like every conversation was a setup for humiliation. Sometimes I wonder if he still does it, or if he ever actually stopped. Maybe he changed his name again, made a new profile, new account, new bets. You'd never be able to tell. Guys like him blend in perfectly. They smile, they ask about your day, they act interested, and all the while there's a clock running in the back of their mind. I think what bothers me most isn't even what he did. It's how ordinary it looked. He didn't act cruel. He didn't say anything mean. He wasn't obviously fake. He was just practiced, like he'd done it enough times to make it second nature. Now, when people talk about trusting your gut, I get it. Because that little feeling I had, the one that said things were too easy, that was the truth trying to warn me. And next time I'll listen. Because the scariest part about Noah wasn't that he lied. It's that he never had to. I never used to be the kind of person who overthinks dating apps. If someone seemed cool, I'd match, talk, maybe meet up. And if it didn't work out, I'd move on. No drama, no deep analysis. But that was before Josh. He wasn't anything extraordinary when I first saw his profile. Just a guy with clean photos, a decent smile, and a line in his bio that said something like, "Looking for someone real." That phrase normally makes me roll my eyes, but for some reason that night, I just didn't care. Maybe I was tired, maybe I was bored. Either way, I swiped right. He messaged within minutes, which caught me off guard. Usually people wait or play some weird timing game. His message was short. "You have the kind of face that looks like trouble." I should have known right then, but it made me laugh. He was easy to talk to. Confident, funny, but not the in-your-face kind. He had a way of making you feel like you were already inside some private joke with him. We talked about random stuff. Bad movies, music, how both of us hated small talk, but somehow couldn't stop doing it. After a few days, he asked for my number. I gave it to him. I don't usually do that so soon, but something about him felt safe. We started texting more. Memes, late-night thoughts, photos of our food, all the usual things. Then he started sending pictures of himself, casual ones, like him in the car, him cooking, him walking his dog. I sent a few back. Nothing weird, just normal stuff. He always hyped me up, said I had a face made for sunlight. It sounded corny, but in that soft, charming way that works. We met in person a week later. He picked a small bar on the east side, the kind of place that's always half empty, with low lighting and quiet music. When I got there, he was already waiting outside, leaning against the wall like he'd been rehearsing it. He smiled the second he saw me. He was taller than I expected, wore this faded denim jacket, and had the kind of calm energy that makes you relax without trying. The night went smoothly. Drinks, laughs, light flirting. I remember thinking it felt too easy. After that, we started seeing each other regularly. We weren't official or anything, but it felt like something that could become real. He'd text me good morning, ask how my day was, send songs he thought I'd like. He was consistent, something I hadn't seen in a while. But then little things started to feel off. Once, I sent him a picture from my camera roll, me sitting in my car, half asleep before work. Nothing special. He replied instantly. "This one's my favorite." I didn't think much of it. But a few days later, when I scrolled through his Instagram, I saw that exact picture. Same lighting, same angle, except it wasn't posted by me. It was his account. He cropped it, flipped it, and captioned it. "Some people see chaos, I see calm." I stared at it for a solid minute, trying to make sense of it. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe he'd saved it and meant to send it back, but it was posted, like commented on, tagged with some poetic nonsense. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, so I asked about it later casually. I said, "Hey, that photo you posted kind of looks like one I sent you." He smiled, shrugged, and said, "You inspired it." I laughed awkwardly, but deep down, something didn't sit right. A week later, one of my friends texted me a screenshot. It was from Tinder. She said, "Isn't this you?" It was my face, my photo, my stained car picture, but it wasn't my account. The name said, Emily, and the bio said, "Looking for something spontaneous." It felt like my heart dropped into my stomach. I clicked through the screenshots she sent. There were more of my photos, selfies, mirror shots, even one I'd taken in a cafe weeks before. Photos I'd sent only to him. Whoever ran that fake profile was using all of them. I didn't want to believe it was him, but the timing lined up too perfectly. I asked my friend to match with the fake profile to see who was behind it. She did. A few messages later, she sent me the screenshots. The guy behind the fake Emily account said his name was Josh. He was using my photos to match with other people. I felt this rush of heat crawl up my neck. I texted him right away, "Why are you using my pictures?" He took a minute before replying. Then he wrote, "Relax. It's just for research." Research? I asked what that even meant, and he sent this long message about how he was studying attraction. He said he'd always wondered how people reacted to different types of profiles, and that using mine got better engagement. He said it like it was some kind of social experiment. I told him it was creepy. He said it was harmless, that no one got hurt. I wanted to scream. He didn't get it. It wasn't about the photos, it was about what it meant. My face, my name, my image, out there, being used by someone else. He texted again saying I should be flattered, that people responded to my pictures more than his, like it was some twisted compliment. I blocked him after that, deleted everything. But it didn't stop. A week later, another friend messaged me with a new fake profile using my face. Different name, same pictures. This time on Bumble. I reported it, and it got taken down, but by then I'd already found 3 more on other apps. It felt like whack-a-mole with my own identity. Every time one disappeared, another popped up. Then I got an email from an account I didn't recognize. The subject line said, "Still my favorite." Inside was the same photo, me in the car. No message, no name, just that image. My stomach turned. I went to the police, but they said unless there was money involved or threats, there wasn't much they could do. They told me to be careful what I share online. I wanted to tell them I hadn't shared anything online. I'd shared it with him. For weeks, I kept seeing fake versions of myself pop up. Sometimes they had new bios, new captions, new names. I'd get random messages from strangers saying they'd talked to me before. It was like being haunted by a copy of myself that I couldn't control. I started recognizing phrases in the bios, things I'd said to him in our conversations. I like people who notice small things. Coffee before everything. The moon doesn't need to explain its glow. Stuff I'd written as jokes, now repurposed into personality traits for fake versions of me. One night, I got curious, or maybe I just couldn't help myself, and I made a fake account to see if I could find the new profiles. I did, and this time, I matched with one of them. The messages came fast, and the person behind it said they were a freelance photographer and loved conversation over small talk. I asked for a photo. They sent one. It was Josh. I stared at it for a long time before typing anything. I asked him why he was doing it again. He replied, "Because I get to see how people react to you without the pressure of being me." I asked him what that even meant. He said it helped him understand attraction, that he was testing responses. I told him he was sick. He said, "No, just curious." I unmatched immediately. After that, I deleted all my social media, changed my numbers, deleted old pictures, even wiped my cloud storage. It didn't matter. The internet doesn't care about what you delete. Once something's out there, it stays. A few months later, I was scrolling through a dating app I hadn't used in forever. I'd reinstalled it just to check. And there it was again. My face. New name. New city. Someone had written under the bio, "I'm just looking for something real." I reported it again, but the message that came back said, "We reviewed your report and found no violations." That was the moment it really hit me. I couldn't stop him. He could just keep doing it forever. Make new accounts, change names, tweak a few details, and there was nothing I could do. Now, when people ask why I don't do online dating anymore, I just say it's not for me. I don't tell them that somewhere out there my face is probably still swiping, still matching, still being someone else's version of me. Sometimes I think about what he said, that it was research. Maybe in his mind it really was. But for me, it was theft. Not just of my photos, but of my sense of safety, my privacy, my control. And the worst part? There's no way to prove it's over. Every time I see someone glance at me in public, I wonder if they think they already know me, from some fake account, some conversation that never really happened. Josh taught me something I never wanted to learn, that sometimes losing control of your image is worse than losing control of your heart. Because at least heartbreak fades. But this just keeps existing. Somewhere, with my face, my smile, my words, all in the wrong hands. I met Hannah on a Sunday afternoon when I was supposed to be doing laundry. I'd been putting it off for a week and figured swiping on Tinder would somehow count as being productive. She popped up after about 5 minutes, red hair, a denim jacket, and this sharp, confident smile that looked like she already knew the outcome of every conversation. Her bio said, "I like arguments that end in understanding, not shouting." Normally, I would have skipped someone who sounded that serious, but something about her caught my attention. Maybe it was the way she looked right into the camera, like she could see through the screen. I swiped right. She matched instantly. Her first message said, "So what's your biggest unpopular opinion?" I laughed because it was a weird way to start, but I liked that she wasn't small-talking me. I said something dumb about how I thought pineapple on pizza wasn't that bad, expecting her to roast me, but she said she respected food open-mindedness. That's what she called it. We ended up talking for hours that day. She was different. She wasn't flirty in the usual way. She didn't compliment, she questioned. She asked about my family, how I was raised, what I believed in. She wanted to know why I thought certain things, not just what I thought. It was intense, but also kind of refreshing. By the second day of talking, she told me she was doing her master's in political psychology. I didn't even know that was a real thing. She said she was writing her thesis on ideological intimacy. When I asked what that meant, she said it was about how people's personal relationships reflect their political beliefs. I joked that sounded heavy for Tinder, and she laughed, saying she needed a break from all the academic robots. We met up about a week later. She picked this little cafe that looked like it had been there since the 80s. Faded wallpaper, wobbly tables, soft jazz playing from a speaker that crackled every few seconds. When I got there, she was sitting by the window with a notebook open, scribbling something. She waved without looking up and said she'd already ordered me a coffee because she'd done her research. The first date was great. We talked for 3 hours about everything: music, education, family, travel. She listened carefully, taking her time before responding. She never interrupted, never checked her phone, just sat there like every word mattered. She asked questions about my job, my background, even how I felt about voting. That one caught me off guard, but she said she just liked hearing perspectives. At one point, she mentioned how she loved having structured disagreements. I didn't even know what that meant, but I went along with it. She said it made her feel alive, clashing with ideas, not people. By the time we left, I was genuinely into her. She had this confidence that didn't feel forced. I dated enough people who acted smart. She actually was. We saw each other again a few days later, this time at her place. She lived in a small flat near campus. Warm lights, shelves filled with books, sticky notes everywhere. Her desk was covered in piles of papers labeled Data 1, interview transcripts, cognitive responses. I teased her about being too organized, and she said, "I like patterns." We ordered food, talked about everything under the sun again, and by the end of the night, I felt like I'd known her forever. She told me I was emotionally articulate, which sounded like the kind of compliment you could only get from a grad student. For a while, everything was easy. We'd go out once or twice a week, text constantly, send each other long paragraphs about random thoughts or news stories. She always wanted to talk about opinions, social stuff, politics, behavior. I didn't mind. It made me feel like she saw depth in me. But over time, things started to feel off. She started bringing up topics I didn't remember mentioning. She'd quote things I'd said weeks earlier word for word. Once, she referenced something I'd said on our second date, a random comment about my dad's job, and repeated it exactly, tone and all. I laughed and said she had a good memory, but she just smiled and said, "I like documenting details." That word, documenting, stuck with me. A few weeks later, I went to her flat again. While she was in the shower, I walked around the living room just glancing at her books and notes. On the coffee table, there was a folder half open. I wasn't snooping, but I couldn't help noticing what was inside. Pages of text, transcripts, conversations, my name written at the top of one of them. I froze. The paragraph I skimmed looked familiar. It was something I'd said during our first date, about how I didn't trust politicians but still believed in voting. She had it written down word for word, with little notes next to it like tone, uncertain, and body language, relaxed. It felt like my chest was caving in. When she came out of the bathroom, I just stood there, holding one of the pages. She saw my face and didn't even look guilty. She said, "You weren't supposed to see that yet." I asked what that was, and she said it was part of her research. That I was one of her participants. I thought she was joking, but she wasn't. She said her thesis was about how romantic dynamics exposed political alignment, how people express their beliefs differently depending on emotional intimacy. She said she'd been interviewing people she dated to analyze their ideological consistency. I asked if she meant she was dating people for her research. She nodded like it was nothing. She said she wasn't faking it, that she genuinely connected with me, but that she'd been observing patterns. I felt my throat tighten. She tried to explain it, saying it was ethnographic research, that she was immersing herself in real-life contexts. I asked if she recorded me, and she said, only the conversations I needed. The worst part, she didn't even sound sorry. She said I'd given great material. I didn't even know what to say. I left her place without touching my phone for the rest of the night. The next day, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I went online and searched her university's website. Sure enough, there was a page about her program. It mentioned her thesis title, The Politics of Attraction, a qualitative study of ideological expression in romantic settings. Right there, in black and white. It hit me like a punch to the gut. I wasn't her boyfriend, I was her data. I texted her that I wanted every recording, every note deleted. She replied saying she'd anonymize my information instead, like I was a research subject, not a person. I told her she had no right to use anything without consent. She replied, "You consented the moment you engaged authentically." That sentence made my skin crawl. I blocked her after that, but part of me knew it wouldn't matter. She already had everything she needed. My words, my expressions, my behavior. Me turned into data points. Weeks passed, and I tried to move on. I stopped checking her profiles, stopped thinking about her lectures or her research. But then a friend of mine sent me a podcast link. "Hey," he said, "isn't this the girl you were seeing?" It was her. She was a guest on a student radio show talking about her thesis. I forced myself to listen. She talked about the emotional resonance of political alignment, using phrases that made my stomach twist. She described one participant who struggled between empathy and skepticism, and I knew she was talking about me. She didn't say my name, but she didn't need to. It's a weird kind of violation, not physical, not even visible. It's like someone stealing your reflection and then explaining it to strangers. I wanted to report her, but what would I even say? She didn't break the law. She didn't hurt me in a way anyone could measure. She just used me. Months later, I saw a post on her academic page. She finished her thesis. It was published. The summary read, "Through immersive fieldwork and relational interaction, this study explores how attraction intersects with ideology." I felt my stomach drop again. She called it fieldwork. That word makes it sound sterile scientific, but I remember those moments, her laughing across the cafe table, her pretending to care when I told her personal stuff. There was nothing sterile about it. She made me feel safe just to dissect me later. I wonder if she ever actually liked me at all, or if every second was just another layer of her experiment. Did she pause after dates to write down my responses? Did she replay things in her head like test results? I'm not the kind of person who usually agrees to group dinners on a first date. In fact, I'd say that's about as far from my comfort zone as you can get. But Chris wasn't a typical match, and I wasn't in my usual mindset when I said yes. We met on Hinge. His profile was almost boringly normal, clean photos, not too filtered, one picture of him hiking, another of him at a dinner table smiling politely with friends. He looked like the kind of guy who'd say good morning to his coworkers and mean it. His bio said he loved structure, loyalty, and red wine. It sounded oddly formal, but something about that made me swipe right. He messaged a few hours later, something simple like, "You have a calm energy in your photos." I like that. It was different from the usual compliments. I told him he looked like the kind of person who alphabetizes their spice rack, and he laughed, saying I wasn't far off. We started talking every day after that. He was charming, but in a restrained way, like he knew exactly how much attention to give without overdoing it. I found it weirdly attractive. He always replied fast, never late, never double texted. Everything about him was efficient. After about a week of chatting, he asked if I wanted to join him for dinner. He said he usually had dinner with friends on Fridays, but thought it'd be nice if I came along. I hesitated. Meeting someone's friends on the first date. It sounded intense, but he said they were a small group, that they met every week, and it was very casual. Something about the way he phrased it, calm, deliberate, confident, made me agree. When I got there, it was one of those trendy restaurants with dim lighting, exposed brick, and fake plants hanging from the ceiling. I spotted him immediately. He was sitting at a long table near the back, already surrounded by a few people. He stood up when he saw me, smiled, and pulled out a chair. That's when I noticed it. Every single woman at the table, there were 4 of them, looked eerily similar to me. They weren't exact copies, but close enough to make my stomach twist. All of them had long brown hair, pale skin, similar builds, even similar clothes, light sweaters, small hoops, neutral makeup. For a second, I thought maybe it was just my imagination. Maybe I was being dramatic. But then one of them turned and smiled, and it was like looking at a reflection that wasn't mine. Chris didn't seem to notice anything strange. He introduced me around like it was normal. This is Ella, this is Brooke, that's Natalie, and that's Jess. They all smiled politely, each one speaking in the same calm, soft tone. I forced a smile and sat down. Dinner started out awkward but civil. The conversation was small talk, travel, work, hobbies. Every time one of the women spoke, Chris would nod attentively, sometimes finishing their sentences. He was the center of the table, controlling the rhythm of everything without seeming like it. He asked one of them a question, then turned to me and say something like, "She's also into art. You'd like her taste, or you and Jess both have similar handwriting, neat and precise." It wasn't just weird, it was unsettling. How did he know what my handwriting looked like? The food came, and I tried to distract myself with it. The others seemed at ease, laughing softly, sipping their drinks, smiling whenever Chris spoke. It was like they were orbiting him. Every time he glanced their way, they straightened slightly, like they were waiting for his approval. At one point, I excused myself to the restroom just to get a breather. My reflection in the mirror made my chest tighten. Long brown hair, hoop earrings, neutral lipstick. I looked exactly like them. When I came back, the table went quiet for a moment, then resumed talking as if nothing happened. Chris smiled and asked if I was okay. I nodded, trying to play it cool, but my mind was racing. After dinner, he offered to walk me to my car. The others stayed behind, laughing at something one of them said, but the laughter sounded too polite, too synchronized. Outside, I asked him straight up if he noticed that every girl there looked kind of the same. He chuckled, not nervously, not defensively, just softly. He said, "I guess I have a type." I forced a smile, but it didn't reach my eyes. Something about the way he said it, so casual, so unbothered, made it worse. When I got home, I couldn't stop thinking about it. The identical faces, the identical energy. It wasn't just a type. It was like he was building a collection. Over the next week, he texted me like nothing was wrong. Same polite rhythm, same charm. He sent me songs, pictures of his cat, random check-ins. I responded at first, trying to convince myself I was overreacting. But then one night, he sent a picture of a dinner table again, another Friday dinner. At first glance, it looked like the same scene, the same restaurant, same setup. But this time, there was a new face at the table. Another woman. Different name tag on the reservation card in front of her, but she looked just like the rest of us. That's when I knew it wasn't a coincidence. I didn't reply to his message. I just stared at it, my chest tightening. Then, out of curiosity or stupidity, I went on social media. His account was private, but the others weren't hard to find. The girls from dinner were all tagged in his old posts. He'd written little captions like "dinner with my favorites" or "always the best company." I started scrolling through the tags. Each one led to another account, and every account looked like a variation of the same woman. Same features, same tone, same aesthetics, cozy photos, muted filters, subtle smiles. It didn't take long to notice the pattern. Every few months there was a new one. Different names, same look. It was like he was cycling through people who fit a mold. I stopped replying to him after that. He messaged a few times, nothing dramatic, just casual stuff. "How's your week going?" Or "missed our conversations." I didn't respond. Then, not a month later, I ran into him by accident at a bookstore downtown. He was standing in one of the aisles, holding the paperback, and when he saw me, his face lit up like nothing had happened. He asked how I'd been. I said fine. Then he said, "You should come to dinner this Friday. Everyone's been asking about you." I froze. I told him I was busy. He nodded, smiled, and said, "You always had the best posture. It's rare." Then he walked away, calm as ever. I left the store and sat in my car for 20 minutes, trying to slow down my breathing. I couldn't shake the image of that dinner table, the way the women had looked at him, the way they all seemed to mirror each other without realizing it. That night, curiosity got the better of me again. I went back to one of the girls' Instagram pages, Brooke, I think. There was a new post, dinner photo. Same restaurant. Chris was there, smiling at the camera, surrounded by all of them. And at the far end of the table, the new girl. Her hair was long and brown. She wore hoop earrings, and she was sitting in the seat I'd sat in before. The caption said, "Friday Family." I blocked every one of them after that. Deleted Tinder. Changed my number a month later, but I still checked sometimes. I don't even know why. maybe to see if there's another one. A few weeks ago, I had a message request on Instagram from an account I didn't recognize. No profile picture, no posts, just one message: "You fit perfectly again." I didn't open it. I just deleted it, locked the account, and turned off my phone. But I couldn't sleep that night, because deep down, I know what that message meant. He wasn't just collecting people, he was replacing them. And somewhere out there, I know there's another Friday dinner happening with the same laughter, the same smiles, the same long brown hair under the same dim light. And maybe when one of them finally stops showing up, her seat doesn't stay empty for long.